The rain hit like tiny knives against Naomi Chisholm's face as she stumbled through Seoul's narrow streets, her third cleaning shift finally bleeding into memory. Her knees screamed with every step, 14 hours of scrubbing marble floors in houses that cost more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes. The soaked uniform clung to her skin, heavy as shame, cold as the truth she carried. One more month of this, and maybe, just maybe, she could send money home to her siblings in Lagos. Just 3 more blocks to the bus stop. 3 more blocks and I can collapse. She'd taken this route 100 times, but never through the alley cutting past Minjun's neighborhood. The man whose house she cleaned, whose face she'd never seen, whose locked basement door whispered secrets she pretended not to hear. Tonight, exhaustion made her reckless. Tonight, she took the shortcut. Thunder cracked the sky open like God's own warning. That's when she saw it. The black SUV twisted across the narrow street, its side punched through with bullet holes that glinted under the flickering streetlight. Shattered glass sparkled across wet pavement like scattered diamonds. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. 2% battery. No signal. The storm had swallowed everything. She should run. Every survival instinct her mother had beaten into her screamed, "Turn around. This isn't your business. In Korea, invisible women stay alive." Then she heard it. Cutting through rain and thunder, a child's whimper. Small, terrified, helpless. Her feet moved before her brain could catch up. Lightning split the darkness, and the world went white. There, in the middle of the street, a man knelt in a spreading pool of blood and rainwater. 2 small bodies pressed against his chest, their thin arms wrapped around his neck like they could hold him to this world through will alone. His expensive suit was shredded, dark with blood that the rain couldn't wash away fast enough. Their eyes met. She knew that face. Not from life, but from the silver-framed photograph in the house she cleaned. The cold, handsome man who paid her in cash and left instructions on the kitchen counter. Lee Min-jun, her employer, her ghost. Recognition flickered in his eyes despite the pain, despite never having stood in the same room together. His lips moved, forming one word she could read even through the rain. Please. That's when she saw it, as he reached toward her with a trembling hand. The tattoo on his wrist. Black ink, savage and beautiful. A dragon coiled around a sword, its tail forming letters in Hangul she'd seen before. On the men who delivered envelopes. On the car doors that came in the night. Oh God, he's... Her employer wasn't a businessman. Her employer was something far more dangerous. Headlights pierced through the rain behind her, growing brighter, closer. The sound of engines, multiple vehicles, approaching fast with the kind of speed that meant violence. Minjun's eyes locked on hers. Not pleading, not commanding, just asking. Asking if she was the kind of person who could walk away from dying children. Asking if she was brave enough to be seen. The twins' whimpers crescendoed into sobs. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The headlights were maybe 10 seconds away. She had 10 seconds to decide. Save a stranger and his children, or save herself from a world she never wanted to enter. Before we find out what Naomi decides, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next will change her life forever. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and trust me, you won't believe who's in those approaching cars. The truth about Min-jun? It's darker than you can imagine. Naomi's hands moved before her mind could catch up, pressing her scarf against the wound in Min-jun's side, the fabric immediately blooming red. Her fingers came away slick and warm, and somewhere in the back of her mind a memory surfaced. 6 months ago. Lagos. Her mother's hospital bed. The machines going silent one by one. The nurse saying, "I'm sorry, there's nothing more we can do." The weight of her mother's hand going cold in hers. The shame of empty pockets when the bill came due. That's when Naomi had made the choice. Seoul. A tourist visa. A dream of sending money to Chidera and Kalechi, her siblings who were still in school, still believing their big sister would save them. She'd arrived with $300 and a suitcase full of hope that lasted exactly 2 weeks before reality gutted her like a fish. Now, kneeling in Korean rain beside a bleeding stranger, she understood. She'd crossed an ocean to escape death, only to crash straight into it. Basement. Code 82219. Medical supplies. Minjun's voice pulled her back, barely a whisper through gritted teeth. His eyes fought to focus on her face. He planned for this, she realized with cold horror. He knew he might get shot. He built a bunker in his own house. What kind of man needs a panic room in his basement? The kind whose children learn to be silent when strangers visit. The kind who pays his maid in cash and forbids questions. The kind whose locked doors hide more than storage. Undocumented, she breathed to herself, the word like a curse. One call to police and I'm deported. But these babies. The little girl, Hannah she remembered from the names on the bedroom doors, clutched a stuffed rabbit to her chest. The same rabbit Naomi had washed last week when the child had gotten sick on it. Even soaked with rain, Naomi recognized the faded pink fur, the missing button eye she'd tried to sew back on. The boy, Hyun, hadn't made a sound, just silent tears streaming down his face, his small hands fisted in his father's ruined shirt, like he could hold him together through will alone. Neither child screamed at her approach. They should have. She was a stranger emerging from darkness, but their eyes held recognition, not of her face, but something deeper. "Sticker lady?" Hyun whispered, his voice breaking. Naomi's heart cracked clean through. The stickers. The little holographic stars and smiling suns she'd been leaving on their drawers for months. Small gifts from an invisible woman who cleaned their rooms, folded their tiny clothes, and wondered what kind of life they led in this beautiful, terrifying house. She'd never expected them to notice. She'd never expected them to remember. "Don't trust Jiwoo." Minjun's warning came out garbled, his consciousness slipping. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth. Jiwoo. Another name she didn't know, another danger she couldn't map. His phone lay shattered 3 feet away, screen dead and useless. Hers was at 1% now, the battery icon flashing red. No signal anyway. The storm had made sure they were alone. The headlights were closer now. Maybe a minute away. Maybe less. Naomi's internal war raged. "I didn't come to Korea to die. I came to survive. I came to work and save and disappear back home with enough money to matter. I came to be invisible." But looking at Hana and Hyun, their small faces streaked with rain and terror, their father's blood staining their clothes, she saw herself. 8 years old in Lagos, watching her father walk away forever. 12 years old, holding Chidera while their mother worked 3 jobs. 16 years old, raising Kelechi because survival didn't ask permission. Helpless. Abandoned by the world, needing someone to choose them. Someone had to choose them. The engines growled closer. "Okay," Naomi whispered, more to herself than to the dying man. "Okay, I've got you." She hooked her arms under Minjun's shoulders and pulled. He was heavy, dead weight almost, and the rain made everything slippery. Her feet skidded on wet pavement. Her muscles screamed. But she'd carried her siblings when they were sick. She'd hauled laundry bags bigger than her own body. She knew how to make her small frame bear impossible weight. "Hana, Hyun, hold on to him. Don't let go." The twins obeyed instantly, their trust in her absolute and unearned. 50 meters to the house. 50 meters that might as well have been 50 miles. She dragged them forward into the darkness, choosing their lives over her invisibility, pulling a mafia boss and his children toward a basement she'd been forbidden to enter. Behind her, the headlights turned the corner. Naomi's shoulders burned as she dragged Minjun through the front door, the twins clinging to their father like barnacles. Behind them, tires shrieked against wet asphalt, 3 black cars sliding to synchronized stops, their headlights painting the street in harsh white light. She kicked the door shut with her heel, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her hands shook so violently she could barely punch in the basement code. 8219. Nothing. God, please. 8219. The lock clicked. The door swung open to reveal stairs descending into darkness. "Hold on," she whispered to the twins, half dragging, half carrying Minjun down the steps. Her foot slipped on the 3rd stair. They tumbled together, landing in a heap at the bottom, just as the first gunshot shattered the front window above them. Lights flickered on automatically, revealing a space that stole her breath. This wasn't a storage room. It was a bunker. Medical supplies lined steel shelves, IV bags, surgical tools, medications with labels she couldn't read. Monitors blinked on a far wall. A glass case held weapons locked behind a keypad. A cot stood in the centre, pristine white sheets waiting like an operating table. He built a hospital in his basement. What kind of life requires this? More gunshots. Closer now. Glass continued to shatter upstairs. Windows, picture frames, the life Min-jun had carefully constructed exploding into fragments. Naomi lifted Min-jun onto the cot with strength she didn't know she possessed. His blood soaked through her uniform, warm and sticky. The twins huddled against the wall, Hana's rabbit clutched between them like a talisman. Okay, Naomi muttered, her mind racing through a first aid video she'd watched once on YouTube. Or was it twice? Stop the bleeding. Pressure. Elevation. Don't panic. She was absolutely panicking. Her hands found gauze, scissors, tape. She cut away Min-jun's shirt, revealing the bullet wound, a hole punched through his left side, still weeping blood. Not spurting. That was good, right? That meant no artery. Please let that mean no artery. Above them, voices shouted in Korean. Naomi's understanding was limited, pieced together from dramas and her employer's occasional phone calls. But these words cut through clear as knives. 조용한 왕이 끝났어. 아이들을 찾아. The quiet king is finished. Find the children. Her blood turned to ice. The quiet king. She'd heard whispers about him in the Korean markets where she bought cheap vegetables. A ghost story the ajumas told in hushed voices. The mafia boss who never raised his voice but left bodies in his wake. The man whose silence was more terrifying than screams. They weren't here to kidnap. They were here to erase. Hana began to cry, a thin, desperate sound. Hyun joined her, their small voices rising toward panic. No, babies, shh. Naomi abandoned the bandage, rushing to them. She covered their mouths gently with her hands, pulling them close. I've got you. You have to be quiet, okay? Like a game. The quiet game. Hyun's eyes were enormous, terrified. Hana trembled against her chest. I've got you, Naomi repeated, her own tears hot against her cheeks. I promise, I've got you. Why? Min-jun's voice, barely audible. His eyes had opened, dark and unfocused, but seeing her. Really seeing her. Why? Are you still here? The question hit harder than any bullet. Naomi looked at him over the twins' heads. This man who'd employed her for 6 months without once speaking to her face to face. This stranger whose children recognized her by scent. This dying king whose blood was on her hands. Because nobody stayed for me, she whispered, the truth ripping out of her like shrapnel. Not once in my entire life. Everyone left. Everyone gave up. Everyone walked away when things got hard. She held the twins tighter. I'm staying for them. Something shifted behind Min-jun's eyes. The armour cracked. For just a moment she didn't see a mafia boss. She saw a man who understood abandonment, who knew exactly what it cost. Then his training kicked back in. He pushed himself up on his elbows, face contorting with pain, and slammed his palm against a section of wall that looked identical to every other section. Steel shutters dropped with a thunderous crash, sealing the basement entrance, covering air vents, transforming the space into a vault. The sound reverberated through Naomi's bones. The gunfire above became muffled, distant. This room, Min-jun gasped, collapsing back. 6 hours. Can hold. 6 hours. My men will come. Your men? Naomi's voice pitched higher. Who are you? What are you? Min-jun looked at his children, then at her. The weight of secrets hung between them like smoke. Someone who shouldn't have involved you, he said finally. I'm sorry. He reached for a phone mounted on the wall, fingers grasping. His strength gave out. He fell. Naomi caught him. Their faces were suddenly inches apart. His blood on her hands, her tears on his shirt, their breath mingling in the sterile air. She could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. could see the exact moment exhaustion and pain dragged him under. But before unconsciousness claimed him, she saw something else. Terror. Not for himself, for the children watching, for the woman who'd chosen to stay. A father terrified of failing his children. Naomi lowered him back to the cot, her hands steadier now. She returned to the medical supplies with new purpose, searching for anything she'd recognize. Her fingers found a drawer, pulled it open. A photograph fluttered out. Min-jun, younger, smiling. A woman beside him, beautiful, brown-skinned, her head wrapped in colourful fabric. Between them, 2 newborn babies, impossibly small. Naomi flipped it over. The handwriting was in English, feminine and flowing. My love, protect them from your world. Elara. She died. Min-jun's eyes had opened again, fixed on the photo in Naomi's hands. She died because of me. Assassination meant for me. She stepped in front of the bullet. His voice broke. I can't let history repeat. I won't. The twins' mother, foreign like Naomi, dead because she loved a dangerous man. The weight of that truth settled over Naomi like a shroud. An explosion rocked the house above them. Dust rained from the ceiling. Hyun whimpered. Naomi made her choice. Then we keep them alive together, she said, her voice steady despite everything. Tell me what to do. Min-jun's eyes cleared, focusing with desperate intensity. He rattled off instructions, access codes, names, how to reach his second-in-command through the encrypted phone, how to treat his wound, where the emergency supplies were hidden. But there's a traitor, he warned, his grip on her wrist surprisingly strong. In my organization, I don't know who. Trust no one. Another explosion, closer. The lights flickered. Naomi looked at the sealed steel shutters, at the twins huddled together, at the bleeding man who'd built a fortress beneath his home because he knew death was always coming. She came to Seoul to disappear. Now she was trapped in a basement with the most wanted man in the underworld, and the only way out was through. Hour 1. The bleeding stopped. Naomi's hands had finally stopped shaking somewhere between the 3rd and 4th suture, if you could call her clumsy stitching sutures. Min-jun had talked her through it, his voice tight with pain but steady, clinical. Pull tighter. Yes, like that. You're doing well. She wasn't doing well. She was stitching human flesh like it was a torn dress, her breakfast threatening to make a reappearance with every pass of the needle. But she didn't stop. Now Min-jun lay on the cot, properly bandaged, an IV drip running into his arm. She'd needed 3 tries to find the vein. His colour was better. Not good, but better. Alive. The twins had finally cried themselves into exhausted sleep, curled against Naomi's sides. She sat on the floor between the cot and the wall, making herself a human shield without thinking about it. Hana mumbled something in her sleep. Her small hand clutched Naomi's shirt. Then clearly, Mama? The word pierced straight through Naomi's chest. She looked up, found Min-jun watching her with an expression she couldn't name. Grief? Gratitude? Something rawer than either. She used to wear lavender perfume, he said quietly. Elara. The twins. They remember the scent more than her face. Naomi glanced down at her uniform. The lavender detergent she bought because it was cheapest. The same detergent she'd used on the twins' laundry for months. Oh, I didn't know, she whispered. I know. Min-jun's eyes closed briefly. That's why it matters. The encrypted phone mounted on the wall suddenly buzzed, a harsh, grating sound that made Naomi jump. Min-jun reached for it, grimacing, pressed the speaker button. Boss! A man's voice, urgent. Boss, we're mobilizing. 20 minutes out. Dae-hyun. Min-jun's voice shifted, became something harder, the quiet king emerging despite the blood loss. Report. The attack came from the Park faction. They're claiming you've gone soft, that you're weak. Dae-hyun's voice held barely restrained fury. They think they can... I'll show them weak. Min-jun tried to sit up, managed maybe 2 inches before his strength gave out. He fell back, jaw clenched in frustration. Naomi watched the disconnect play out across his face, the legend his reputation had built versus the reality of his broken body. For all his power, right now he couldn't even stand. 20 minutes, Dae-hyun repeated. Hold on. The line went dead. Silence settled, broken only by the twins' soft breathing. Why do you care? Naomi's question surprised even herself, but she needed to understand, needed to know who she'd tied her fate to. Minjun turned his head, studying her. Why do I care about what? About me. About who I am. She gestured at the space between them. You could have just ordered me to help you, but you asked. Why? Because you could have run. His gaze didn't waver. You didn't. I need to understand who you are. So Naomi told him. Not everything. You couldn't compress a lifetime into minutes, but fragments. Leaving Lagos with her mother's medical bills still unpaid. Arriving in Seoul with dreams that died in the first week. The tourist visa that expired. The fear that lived in her spine every time she saw police. Scrubbing toilets for families who looked through her like she was made of glass. Invisible. Always invisible. Minjun listened with an intensity that unnerved her, like he was memorizing every word, cataloguing every detail. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. My father built this empire on the backs of people like you, he said finally. Immigrants, desperate people. He used them, discarded them, destroyed them when they were no longer useful. His voice held self-loathing. I inherited his kingdom and his sins. You're not him. How do you know? Because you said sorry. Naomi met his eyes. You apologized for involving me. Monsters don't apologize. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or hope. Hour 2. Naomi changed Minjun's bandages, checking for infection. Her fingers brushed his skin, the contact electric unexpected. They both felt it. The air in the bunker suddenly charged with something that had nothing to do with danger. Minjun pulled back first. You should hate me, he said, voice rough. Everything I am represents everything that crushes people like you. Naomi's hands stilled. She looked at Hannah and Hyun, still sleeping peacefully despite the violence above. I don't hate you, she said fiercely. I hate that those babies have to grow up in this darkness. I hate that their mother died protecting them from your world. I hate that you built a hospital in your basement, because getting shot is just another Tuesday for you. Then help me get them out of it. The words hung between them. An invitation, a promise, a shared mission beyond just surviving the night. How? Naomi asked. I don't know yet. Minjun's honesty was disarming. But I'll find a way, if we survive this. When? Naomi almost corrected. When we survive this. The phone buzzed again. Boss? Dae-hyun's voice tense. Ji-woo wants to speak with you. He says he has information about the traitor. Minjun's entire body went rigid. Put him on. A click, then a different voice, smooth, concerned. Minjun, thank God you're alive. I know who sold you out. Meet me at the Eastern Safe House when you're extracted. I'll have proof. Ji-woo. Minjun's tone was unreadable. You're certain? I'm certain. Trust me, brother. I'll explain everything. The line disconnected. Minjun stared at the phone, his expression troubled. Ji-woo is my oldest friend, he said, almost to himself. If he's found the traitor. But you said not to trust Ji-woo. Minjun's head snapped toward her. What? In the street, before you passed out, you said, don't trust Ji-woo. Naomi's certainty wavered under his confusion. You don't remember? Minjun pressed his palm against his forehead. The concussion, are you sure? I'm sure. They stared at each other, the implications sinking in like poison. If Minjun had warned her about Ji-woo but couldn't remember. If Ji-woo was his oldest friend, but also potentially the traitor. How do you fight an enemy you can't identify? Hour 4. The explosions stopped. Silence flooded the bunker, thick, suffocating, more terrifying than any noise. Naomi's ears rang with the absence of violence. Then, a voice, amplified through a speaker system she hadn't known existed. Minjun, cultured, amused. "We know you're in there. We'll wait." A pause. "Your children must be hungry by now." Psychological warfare. They'd switched tactics. Naomi checked their supplies, her stomach sinking. Bottled water, energy bars, basic rations. Enough for maybe 2 days. But the twins would need real food soon. And Minjun needed proper medical care, not her amateur stitching. She looked at the twins still sleeping, at Minjun watching her with fevered eyes, at the sealed vault that was both sanctuary and prison. Think, you've survived worse. You always find a way. Naomi began organising, creating a schedule, rationing supplies, planning for scenarios she desperately hoped wouldn't happen. She found colouring books in a storage bin, crayons, small toys, preparation for exactly this kind of siege. He always knew this day might come. When the twins woke, she distracted them with games, drew pictures, sang songs her mother used to sing in Igbo, made them laugh despite the muffled threats filtering from above. Minjun watched her the entire time. "You're good at this," he said finally. Naomi glanced at him. "I raised my siblings after my father left. I know how to make miracles from nothing." His expression shifted, admiration mixed with something deeper. He wasn't seeing a maid anymore. He was seeing a survivor, a strategist, someone as capable as any lieutenant in his organisation, someone he could trust. "When this is over," Minjun said quietly, "I want to meet them, your siblings." Naomi's hand stilled on Hana's hair, braiding it into small sections. "Why?" "Because family is everything," he said simply. "And anyone who can create miracles from nothing deserves to have their family whole." In that moment, trapped in a bunker beneath a war zone, Naomi felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Hope. The steel shutters groaned upward like the mouth of some mechanical beast. Naomi's arms tightened around the twins instinctively, pulling them behind her body. Her heart hammered against her ribs as boots thundered down the basement stairs. The first man through was a giant, tall, broad-shouldered, a scar cutting from his left eyebrow to his jaw. His gun swept the room in a professional arc before landing on Minjun's prone form. Then his eyes found the children. Something softened in that scarred face. Something almost gentle. "Boss." He bowed deeply, a gesture of such profound respect it seemed religious. "We need to move you. Now." "Dae-hyun." Minjun's voice was weak but steady. He tried to push himself up, muscles straining. Made it maybe 6 inches before his strength evaporated. He collapsed back, breath hissing through clenched teeth. Dae-hyun was beside him in an instant, assessing the amateur bandaging job with a professional eye. His gaze flicked to Naomi, surprised, calculating. "You did this." Naomi nodded, unsure if she was about to be thanked or blamed. "You saved his life." 4 men entered behind Dae-hyun, moving with military precision. They had a stretcher, medical equipment, weapons that made Naomi's stomach turn. Within minutes, Minjun was secured, an IV replaced, the twins bundled in blankets. Naomi stood awkwardly to the side, suddenly aware she was no longer needed. Her uniform was stiff with dried blood, Minjun's blood. Her hands were stained, her entire body ached. I'll just... She gestured vaguely toward the stairs, toward escape, toward the life she'd had before tonight turned everything to ash. "She comes with us." Minjun's voice cut through the organised chaos. Every man in the room froze. Dae-hyun's expression was careful, neutral. "Boss, she's a civilian, an undocumented one. She's under my protection." Minjun's eyes locked on Naomi, and despite his weakness, the quiet king emerged fully. Cold. Absolute. "Anyone who touches her answers to me." The words landed like an edict. Naomi's breath caught. She'd expected payment, Maybe threats to keep silent. Instead, she'd been claimed, marked as his. She was now a permanent part of this world. They moved through Seoul's pre-dawn streets in a convoy of 3 armoured vehicles. Naomi sat in the middle car with the twins pressed against her sides, Min-jun on the stretcher across from her, Dae-hyun in the front passenger seat speaking rapid Korean into his phone. Hannah had stopped crying but wouldn't let go of Naomi's hand. Hyun stared out the tinted window at the city sliding past, neon signs and empty streets, a Seoul most people never saw. "Where are we going?" Naomi asked. "Eastern Safe House," Dae-hyun said without turning. "Secure location, medical facilities." Something cold slithered down Naomi's spine. Eastern Safe House. Why did that sound familiar? "Meet me at the Eastern Safe House when you're extracted." Ji-woo's voice echoed in her memory. Her instincts screamed danger, but she didn't know these people, didn't understand their world. Maybe all safe houses were Eastern. Maybe it was coincidence. But Naomi had learned young that coincidences were just tragedies waiting to happen. The safe house was a warehouse in Seongdong-gu, industrial and anonymous. As they pulled up, Naomi noticed the ground, concrete, dry. She glanced at the sky. No rain, not a drop. They carried Min-jun inside. The space was surprisingly clean, furnished with medical equipment, sleeping quarters, a kitchen area. Almost comfortable, if you ignored the weapons rack on the far wall. And standing in the centre, smiling like he'd been waiting for them, was the most beautiful man Naomi had ever seen. Ji-woo. Tall, elegant, with the kind of face that belonged in dramas. His suit was immaculate, his smile was warm, his shoes had fresh mud on them. "Brother!" Ji-woo rushed forward, embracing Min-jun carefully, mindful of his injuries. "Thank God you're alive. I was so worried." Min-jun returned the embrace, but Naomi saw the tension in his shoulders, the calculation in his eyes. "Where were you?" Naomi whispered to Dae-hyun, the question slipping out before she could stop it. "During the attack. Where was Ji-woo?" Dae-hyun's face went pale. His hand moved subtly toward his weapon. "He said he was securing the secondary location." "It hasn't rained here," Naomi continued, voice low. "But his shoes have mud, fresh mud, the kind you get from the construction site near the house." Dae-hyun finished, understanding dawning like horror. "Where the attack happened." Their eyes met. A silent agreement passed between them. "Did you find the traitor?" Dae-hyun asked Ji-woo, his tone casual, but his body coiled tight. Ji-woo's smile never wavered. "Still investigating, but I have leads, solid ones." Too smooth, too practiced, like he'd rehearsed the lie. Min-jun had been lowered onto a medical cot. His eyes, though heavy with pain medication, were suddenly alert, watching Ji-woo with an intensity that made the air feel thin. "Ji-woo," Min-jun said quietly, "what did we promise each other the night my father died?" The room went silent. Ji-woo's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. "We promised to protect the empire together, to never let outsiders destroy what your father built." "Interesting." Min-jun's voice was ice. "Because that night never happened. My father died alone in a hospital room. You weren't there." The mask shattered. Ji-woo's beautiful face twisted into something ugly, rage and resentment pouring out like poison from a wound. "You were supposed to die in that street, Min-jun." His voice was venom. "You and those half-breed children." Naomi gasped. The racial slur against Hannah and Hyun ignited something feral in her chest. She pulled the twins behind her, her body a shield. "Your father promised me leadership," Ji-woo continued, his composure completely gone. 20 years of loyalty, and what did I get? Nothing. Because of blood. Because you were born into the right family while I built this empire from the ground up, and then you spit on everything by playing father to illegitimate... Min-jun moved. Despite his injuries, despite the blood loss, he moved like violence personified. His gun was suddenly in his hand, barrel pressed against Ji-woo's temple. The quiet king was no longer quiet. "Finish that sentence," Min-jun whispered. "I dare you." But Jiwoo laughed. Men emerged from the shadows, 6, 8, 10 armed soldiers who'd been hidden in the warehouse. Guns trained on Minjun, on Daehyun, on Naomi and the children. You think I'm the only one who wants you dead? Jiwoo's sneer was triumphant. The Park faction paid me, yes, but there are 5 other families waiting for your fall. You're finished, Minjun, and your precious... His eyes landed on Naomi with such contempt it felt physical. The maid who thinks she's special now. She's just another body you'll use and discard, just like you used Alara, just like you use everyone. She's the only person in 5 years who chose my children over money or power. Minjun's voice rang out clear and true, shocking everyone, including Naomi suspected himself. She's worth more than all of you. The vulnerability in that admission cracked something open in Naomi's chest. He'd fallen for her, without meaning to, without wanting to. He'd fallen. How touching, Jiwoo sneered. Let's see if she's still worth it when... Daehyun moved first. The firefight erupted like thunder, deafening, chaotic, lethal. Naomi grabbed the twins and ran, following Daehyun's shouted directions toward a door she hadn't noticed before. Bullets sparked off concrete. Men screamed. Minjun fought like the legend whispered about in Seoul's shadows, injured, bleeding, but absolutely unstoppable. Every movement precise, every shot finding its mark. They crashed through the door into darkness, underground tunnels stretching beneath the warehouse. Daehyun had a flashlight, leading them deeper into Seoul's forgotten spaces. Behind them, Jiwoo's voice echoed. I'll find you, Minjun, and I'll finish what I started. They didn't stop running for what felt like hours. When they finally emerged in an abandoned subway station, Minjun collapsed. His wound had reopened. Blood soaked through fresh bandages. Naomi realized the truth with crystalline clarity. They were fugitives now, in Minjun's own empire, unable to trust anyone, hunted by everyone. She wasn't just protecting the twins anymore, she was protecting the man she was beginning to love. Minjun looked at his children, then at Naomi. His eyes held everything he couldn't say. I've lost my empire, he whispered. But I won't lose them. The abandoned subway station smelled like rust and despair. Naomi had thought the basement bunker was bad, but this was the kind of place hope came to die. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, each drop echoing like a countdown. The emergency lights Daehyun had rigged cast everything in sickly yellow, making the twins look like ghosts. Minjun's fever had spiked an hour ago. Now he lay on a makeshift bed of jackets and blankets, shivering despite the sweat pouring down his face. His wound had reopened during their escape, and Naomi's amateur stitches hadn't held. She pressed fresh gauze against the bleeding, her hands steadier than her heart. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to watch him die and there's nothing I can do. The twins wouldn't stop crying. They'd been traumatized into silence during the firefight. But now, in this cold darkness, everything they'd been holding in came flooding out. Hana sobbed into Naomi's side. Hyun curled into a ball, rocking himself. Naomi was at her breaking point. No money, no passport, no future except the one where a bullet found her. She'd come to Seoul to survive. Instead, she'd chosen to die. Daehyun ended his phone call with a curse that needed no translation. He turned to face them, his scarred face grim. Boss, he said quietly. The Park family has put a bounty on all of you. 5 million won for the twins. 10 million for you. He looked at Naomi, and she saw pity in his eyes. That's how she knew it was bad. 3 million for the foreign woman. The words hit like bullets. They want me dead just for helping. Her voice sounded distant, disconnected from her body. Daehyun nodded. You've seen too much. You're a liability. He hesitated, then delivered the final blow. Immigration has been tipped off. They know about an undocumented Nigerian woman connected to organised crime. There's a warrant for your arrest. The world tilted. Deportation. Prison. Either way, she'd never see her siblings again. Never finish what she'd started. Everything, every sacrifice, every degrading job, every moment of invisibility, all for nothing. Dae-hyun. Min-jun's voice was weak but clear. He'd been listening. Take Naomi to the Chinese embassy. They have connections. Get her out of Korea safely. Naomi's head snapped up. What? No! You've done enough. Min-jun still wouldn't look at her. This isn't your war. But it was. Somewhere between the rain-soaked street and this underground tomb, it had become hers. I'm not leaving. You are. Min-jun's tone left no room for argument. The quiet king giving orders, even from his deathbed. I should never have let you into my world. The dismissal felt like a slap. You think I stayed for you? Naomi heard herself shouting, vaguely aware the twins had gone silent, watching. I stayed for them. But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. She'd stayed for all three of them. Somewhere along the way, the bleeding man with sad eyes and dangerous hands had become hers to protect too. And they'll get you killed. Min-jun's brutal honesty cut through everything. I can't watch another woman die because of me. Ilara, the ghost between them, always. So you'll just throw me away? Naomi's voice broke. Like everyone else in my life has. Like I'm nothing. You're everything. The words ripped out of Min-jun like they hurt. That's why you have to go. I thought you saw me, really saw me, but I'm still just... Don't leave! Hana's scream cut through their argument. She launched herself at Naomi, small arms wrapping around her waist with desperate strength. You promised you wouldn't leave. I didn't... But maybe she had. In the basement, during the long hours. Maybe she'd whispered promises she didn't remember making. Hyun uncurled from his ball, walked to Naomi on unsteady legs. His face was wet with tears, but his voice was clear. Full sentences, when he'd barely spoken words before. Mama left. Don't go like Mama. The comparison destroyed them both. Naomi looked at Min-jun, saw him shattering in real time, saw the guilt and grief and love warring on his face, but he turned away. Dae-hyun, take her, now. Naomi kissed both twins goodbye, memorizing the feel of their small bodies against hers. Hana's rabbit clutched between them, Hyun's tears soaking into her shoulder. Be brave, she whispered, the words ash in her mouth. Be so brave. Min-jun wouldn't look at her. If he did, he'd break. She knew that. Understood it. Hated him for it anyway. Dae-hyun led her toward the exit tunnel, his hand gentle on her elbow. Behind them, Hyun started screaming. Really screaming, the first real emotion he'd shown since his mother died. The sound followed Naomi into the darkness, clawing at her resolve. She almost turned back. Dae-hyun pushed her forward, not unkindly. This is what the boss wants. They reached the tunnel exit. Dae-hyun was explaining the route to the embassy when his phone rang. She watched his face drain of colour. Boss, he said into the phone, voice tight. We have a problem. Ji-woo has Seo-yeon. Who's Seo-yeon? Naomi asked, though dread already had the answer. Min-jun's younger sister. Dae-hyun was already turning back toward the station. She returned from America this morning. We didn't know. She went straight to her brother's house. The stakes had just become personal in a new way. Dae-hyun left her at the tunnel entrance, told her to wait for the embassy contact, to not move, to stay safe. Then he ran back toward Min-jun. Naomi stood alone in Seoul's underground, listening to water drip and her own ragged breathing. She imagined Min-jun receiving the news, already broken from sending her away. Now this final blow. His sister, kidnapped because of him, because love made you vulnerable, because family was both salvation and curse. She imagined him breaking. The quiet king finally, utterly shattered. Above ground she found stairs. Emerged into early morning Seoul, the city waking up, unaware of the war being fought beneath its feet. A convenience store television showed breaking news. Mafia boss Lee Min-jun's sister kidnapped. Ransom demands include his children. Naomi's blood turned to ice. Min-jun would trade himself. Would trade Hana and Hyun. would sacrifice everything for his sister because that's what family meant to him, and Jiwoo would kill them all. She stood on that Seoul street corner, her evacuation contact minutes away, freedom within reach. She thought about her siblings in Lagos, about finally being safe, about survival, that old familiar friend. Then she thought about Hyun's voice. Mama left. Don't go like Mama. About Minjun's eyes when he'd said, she's worth more than all of you. About Hana's small hand in hers. About choosing to stay when every instinct screamed run. Naomi had run from danger her entire life. But love, she discovered, made cowards brave. She turned away from freedom and ran back toward the darkness. Naomi didn't board the evacuation vehicle. The embassy contact, a slight Chinese man with kind eyes, waited beside a nondescript sedan, holding the door open. Freedom, safety, survival. She looked at that open door and saw everything she'd wanted since arriving in Seoul: invisibility, escape, a chance to start over somewhere her past couldn't follow. Then she thought about Hyun's screams still echoing in her ears. I'm sorry, she told the confused man. I can't. She ran, back through Seoul's underground tunnels, her lungs burning, her legs screaming. She'd memorized the route during their escape, survival instinct cataloguing every turn, every landmark. Now that same instinct drove her forward toward danger instead of away from it. Dae-hyun stood guard at the subway entrance, weapon drawn. His eyes widened when he saw her. Miss Naomi, the boss ordered... I don't take orders. She pushed past him, stronger than her small frame suggested. I make choices, and I choose them. He didn't stop her. Minjun looked up when she entered, and the expression on his face nearly broke her. Shock, hope, fear, love, raw and undeniable. Why did you come back? Naomi crossed the space between them, kneeling beside his makeshift bed. The twins were asleep finally, exhausted from crying. Dae-hyun had retreated to give them privacy. Because you don't get to decide my story. I do. Her voice was fierce, certain. Everything she'd never been allowed to be in this country. And my story doesn't end running away from the first man who ever saw me as more than a maid. The admission hung between them, vulnerable and true. Minjun reached for her hand, his grip weak but steady. When he spoke her name, it sounded different, sacred. Naomi. First time he'd said it with such tenderness, like prayer, like promise. So what's the plan to save your sister? Minjun's expression went hollow. There is no plan. Jiwoo wants me to bring the twins to the Jangchung warehouse district. He kills us all, takes over my empire. That's not a plan. Naomi's mind was already racing, calculating. That's suicide. She looked at Dae-hyun, who'd returned and was listening intently. What assets do we have? Dae-hyun blinked, surprised by her tactical thinking. 3 loyal men, limited weapons, and the element of surprise. Jiwoo thinks you've left the country. Good. Naomi stood, pacing. Her brain worked differently than theirs, not through violence but through systems. Through finding cracks in seemingly solid walls. He'll be tracking your phones, your movements, every digital footprint. We've been careful. Dae-hyun started. Not careful enough. Naomi interrupted. Jiwoo has someone feeding him information, but he doesn't know I exist in his system. Minjun stared at her. What are you saying? Before I was a maid, I studied computer science in Lagos. The words came out defensive, armoured against judgment. I'm good with systems, really good. You never asked. The rebuke landed hard. Rich people never asked the help about their degrees, or their dreams, or who they were before desperation made them invisible. Minjun flinched. I'm sorry. For assuming. For trying to send you away. For everything. You can apologize by staying alive. The twins stirred, sensing the shift in energy. They looked at Naomi, then at their father. Something passed between the 4 of them, understanding, unity, hope. Naomi worked on Minjun's encrypted laptop, her fingers flying across keys, breaking through firewalls, tracing communication networks. It was like flexing muscles she'd forgotten she had. There. She turned the screen toward Minjun and Daehyun. Messages between Jiwoo and the Park family patriarch. The messages were damning. Coordinates, payment schedules, most crucially, a meeting time. Tomorrow night, Naomi read. Jiwoo is collecting payment before killing you. He's so confident you're already finished that he's celebrating early. Minjun's smile was sharp as broken glass. Which means we hit him tonight, while he thinks he's safe. Exactly. Preparation happened fast. Daehyun called in his 3 most trusted men, soldiers who'd served Minjun's father and now served the son. They brought weapons, tactical gear, medical supplies for Minjun's reopened wound. Minjun insisted on training Naomi in basic self-defense despite his injuries. Your stance is too narrow, he said, moving behind her, his hands on her hips, adjusting her position. The touch was professional, but intimate, charged with everything unspoken between them. Like this? Perfect. His voice was low, close to her ear. You're a fast learner. Their eyes met. The air between them crackled. Daehyun cleared his throat loudly from across the room. The twins were moved to the safest location, a church basement where Daehyun's most trusted man, an older soldier named Park, would guard them. Hana cried when Naomi tried to leave. Hyun clung to his father. Naomi knelt, taking their small faces in her hands. I'm bringing your father back, she promised, and your Aunt Seo-yeon. We're going to be a family, a real one. But I need you to be brave for just a little longer. You'll come back? Hana's voice was so small. I'll always come back. Naomi kissed their foreheads. Always. Before they left, Minjun pulled Naomi aside. The subway station was empty except for Daehyun doing final weapons checks. If we don't survive tonight, I need you to know... Naomi pressed her finger to his lips, silencing him. Tell me after. Give us something to survive for. But she kissed him. Brief, fierce, full of promise and desperation. His arms came around her, pulling her close despite his injuries. The kiss deepened, months of tension and denial and impossible attraction finally breaking free. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. I will burn down the entire underworld to keep you safe, Minjun whispered against her lips. Naomi smiled, not the careful, invisible smile of a maid, but something wild and free. Then let's burn it together. They moved through Seoul's darkness toward the Jangcheong warehouse district. 4 people against an empire. Impossible odds, but Naomi was done being invisible. Let's show them what happens when they underestimate the invisible, she said. Minjun took her hand, squeezed once. Together, they walked into the fire. The warehouse district was a maze of corrugated metal and broken dreams. Naomi crouched beside Minjun in the shadows, her phone screen glowing softly as she worked. Security cameras disabled, she whispered. You've got a 3-minute window before the backup system notices. Minjun nodded to Daehyun. They split, Daehyun's team circling around back, Minjun and Naomi going through the eastern entrance. 2-pronged attack, divide Jiwoo's forces. Despite his injuries, Minjun moved like liquid death. Every step precise, controlled. The legendary Quiet King fully emerged, terrifying and beautiful. Naomi followed, heart hammering but mind clear. She'd spent her life being underestimated. Tonight, she'd make that her wep. They found Seo-yeon in a shipping container in the warehouse's centre. Beaten but alive, her defiant eyes blazing even through swelling and bruises. She couldn't have been more than 25, with Minjun's same elegant bone structure and fierce pride. Oppa! She hissed when Minjun cut her restraints. You shouldn't have come. It's a trap. I'll always come for family. Minjun's voice cracked with emotion. He pulled his sister into a careful embrace. Seo-yeon noticed Naomi over his shoulder. Who's she? Minjun looked at Naomi, and the weight of everything between them was in that gaze. Someone who chose us. The words landed like benediction. Family wasn't blood. It was choice. Lights flooded the warehouse, blinding, sudden. Ji-woo's slow clap echoed from somewhere above them. I knew you couldn't resist playing hero, Min-jun. So predictable. He appeared on a catwalk, surrounded by armed men. More soldiers emerged from shadows, 20, 30. The Park family patriarch stood beside Ji-woo, ancient and terrible. Min-jun's jaw tightened. You weren't confident. You were baiting me. And you brought me the foreign rat as a bonus. Ji-woo's smile was venomous. How convenient. Ji-woo descended, his resentment pouring out like poison finally lanced from a wound. Years of being second, watching Min-jun inherit everything through birth, while Ji-woo built the empire through blood and ruthlessness. Your father would have never let a black woman and mixed-blood bastards disgrace this empire, Ji-woo spat. Min-jun's response was ice and fire. My father built an empire on hate. I'm building a family on choice. The philosophical divide between them couldn't have been clearer. Legacy versus love, tradition versus evolution. Touching. Ji-woo raised his hand, signaling his men. Kill them. Naomi's fingers flew across her phone screen. The warehouse doors slammed shut, every exit, every escape route. Locked. The sound of metal on metal rang like funeral bells. Ji-woo's confidence cracked. What did you do? I learned from the best. Naomi's smile was sharp. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is information. Her phone pinged. Then every phone in the warehouse pinged. Ji-woo's men pulled out their devices, faces going pale as they read the messages flooding through the Sangryon organization's network. Evidence of Ji-woo's betrayal, his deals with the Park family, his plan to kill Min-jun and the children. Every damning message, every transaction, broadcast to the entire syndicate. You! Ji-woo lunged for her. Dae-hyun's team breached from the back. Chaos erupted. Gunfire, shouting, bodies colliding. Min-jun met Ji-woo in the center. No guns, just fists and fury, and years of brotherhood turned to betrayal. They fought with savage intimacy, each knowing the other's moves, each predicting strikes before they landed. Naomi grabbed Seo-yeon, pulling her behind cover. A Park soldier appeared, gun raised. Naomi moved without thinking, the self-defense Min-jun taught her taking over. She stepped inside his guard, struck his wrist, twisted. The gun clattered away. She stared at her own hands, shocked. I did that. I'm stronger than I knew. Min-jun had Ji-woo on his knees, gun pressed against his former friend's temple. Everyone froze. Kill me, Ji-woo gasped, blood streaming from his mouth. But it won't matter. I sent a secondary team for your children. They're dead either way. Min-jun's hand trembled. Everything hung in terrible balance. Naomi's phone buzzed. Message from Park. Twin Secure intercepted the team. They're asking for Sticker Lady. Relief crashed through her like a wave. She laughed, slightly hysterical, fully triumphant. Your secondary team failed, she called across the warehouse. We planned for your plan. Min-jun lowered his gun. Ji-woo looked up, confused. What are you doing? Giving you what you wanted. Min-jun's voice was eerily calm. Freedom from my empire. He nodded to Dae-hyun. Strip him of everything. Money, protection, identity. Make him nobody. Understanding dawned on Ji-woo's face. Horror worse than death. You're making me invisible, he whispered. Now you'll understand what it's like to be underestimated. Min-jun glanced at Naomi. Maybe you'll learn what she taught me. Mercy as the ultimate power move. Sangryon lieutenants began arriving, having seen Naomi's evidence broadcast. They assessed the scene, then bowed to Min-jun in unison. The Quiet King has spoken. We stand with you. Min-jun's response shocked them all. The Empire changes. No more trafficking. No more exploiting the vulnerable. We protect, not prey. Silence. Then slowly, heads nodded. A Mafia family reimagined through love's influence. The Park patriarch approached, ancient eyes assessing. You've won this round, Lee Min-jun, but stay out of our territories. Agreed. Min-jun extended his hand. The war ends tonight. They shook. peace brokered through demonstrated power and restraint. Outside, dawn was breaking over Seoul. Naomi stood beside Minjun, Seo-yeon on his other side, Daehyun behind them. "Is it over?" Naomi asked. Minjun took her hand. "It's just beginning." 3 months later. The apartment smelled like home. Jollof rice simmering on the stove, the spice of Scotch bonnet peppers mixing with sesame oil from the kimchi in the fridge. Naomi stirred the pot while Hana and Hyun helped, by scattering rice grains across the kitchen floor like confetti. "Mama Omi, I'm making art," Hana announced, arranging grains into a lopsided heart. Naomi's chest tightened with joy every time she heard that name. "Beautiful, baby." The door opened. Seo-yeon breezed in, fully recovered, her bruises now just memory. "Oppa, please tell me you're not attempting to cook again. Last time you nearly burned down the kitchen making ramyun." Minjun emerged from the bedroom, mock-offended. "That was once." "Twice," Naomi and Seo-yeon corrected in unison, then dissolved into laughter. Minjun had changed, still dangerous when necessary. The legend of the Quiet King kept threats at bay, but he'd stepped back from daily operations. Reformed lieutenants ran legitimate businesses now, protection services, security consulting, the empire reimagined. He watched Naomi teach Hyun to count in Igbo, and something in his expression made her heart skip. Wonder, gratitude, love so deep it had no bottom. This life, chaotic and domestic and beautifully ordinary, was one he'd never imagined possible. Naomi was no longer invisible. Minjun had used his connections to secure her legal residency. She was enrolled at Seoul National University, finishing her computer science degree. She consulted for his security company, her skills finally valued and compensated fairly. She'd found her voice, her power, herself. The twins had transformed too. Hana was vibrant, talkative, always singing songs that mixed Korean and English and the Nigerian pidgin Naomi taught her. Hyun had opened like a flower, artistic, gentle, his drawings covering the refrigerator. They were healing, all of them. "Walk with me." Minjun's question came at sunset. Naomi wiped her hands, suspicious of his nervous energy. They walked to the Han River, the city glowing golden around them. "I want to build something," Minjun said. "A foundation. For immigrants like you, struggling in Seoul, legal help, job training, protection from exploitation." Naomi stopped walking. "You're serious? You taught me that power should protect, not oppress." His eyes held hers. "Help me build it. Partner with me." Partnership first, the foundation of real love. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes." Later, back at the apartment, the twins finally asleep. Minjun was nervous in a way she'd never seen. "There is one more thing." No grand gesture, no elaborate setup. Just Minjun, vulnerable and honest, taking her hands in his. "Will you let me choose you every day for the rest of our lives?" The simplicity of it broke her open. "Yes." Tears streaming. "Yes, yes, yes." Their kiss was tender, full of promise, hard-earned through blood and fear, and choosing each other when it would have been easier to run. Naomi's phone rang. Video call from Nigeria. She answered, and Chidera and Kelechi's faces filled the screen. She introduced them to Minjun, to the twins, to this impossible family she'd built from choice and courage. "Sister," Chidera teased, "you went to clean houses and found a king." Naomi laughed, the sound free and full. "I found something better. I found home." Home wasn't a place. It was the people who chose to stay. Family dinner around their modest table, Hana bouncing in her seat. "Tell the story again. How you found Daddy in the rain." Naomi looked at Minjun. He squeezed her hand. "It's the story of how we all found each other," he said softly. Naomi began. "One stormy night I made a choice that changed everything." Naomi's voice, soft and reflective. "They say love finds you when you're not looking, but I think love finds you when you're brave enough to stay, even when every instinct screams run. I came to Seoul invisible, desperate, afraid. I found myself in the last place I expected, kneeling in the rain, choosing to save strangers who became my family. Sometimes the greatest love stories don't start with a kiss. They start with a choice to see someone's humanity when the world tells you to look away. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more beautiful love stories. Drop a comment telling me, what choice have you made that changed your life? What did you think of Naomi and Minjun's journey? Your engagement helps us bring you more content like this. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay.